Welcome, friends, to a podcast with interesting people. I'm Adrian Sinclair, and today my guests will be Kristen and Shayn Bowler from Utah Natural Meats and Milk Farm. And I'm super excited to talk to them about food security, about farming, about topics related to food and health. And I'm super excited to have them on the show. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
How are you?
Doing well.
It's been some time since I've been kind of planning and wanting to ask you guys to be on the show. So really appreciated that you guys made the time to do this. I know how busy it is to do what you do, being farmers and maintaining farm and your store and the whole business. But I wanted to, since my family and I were your customers for some time, and we're really enjoying the products and everything that you guys do. And so on occasion when we talked about how you guys are running your farm and, the food, when you guys are sharing your story, how are you doing, why are you doing some of the things? And I figured I wanted to share your story. And I know you guys have a website and you guys are fairly active, kind of sharing the life on the farm and food production. But I wanted to kind of make this a little bit more personal in a sense of conversation so that people can kind of connect, get to know you a little bit better and also learn about some of the topics we're going to be talking about, which is food, farming, and, the pros and cons for that. And so welcome to the show, and that's what we're going to talk about. So I'd love to start with asking you how long you guys have been farming.
I'll let you field that one.
Yeah, that depends on where you start, I guess. I'm the fifth generation in my family to farm. That has changed a little bit over the years. Kristen and I have been running the farm for, it's probably been about 16, 17 years since we've kind of taken it over from my parents. My parents are still involved somewhat. We run the day-to-day, we make the decisions, we do the work. So we have changed it quite a bit to where now we sell direct to consumer,
right?
Which is a big change from the way we used to just raise animals and sell them on the open market.
Wow. So that's one of the reasons why you guys are doing it. It's tradition. It's your families, generations after generations doing this, and it's a backbreaking and hard work. And your farm is in West Jordan, which is, as we're visiting you, going to your store, it gets encroached more and more by developments. You guys probably seen nothing around you, for decades, and now everything is just kind of mushrooming around you and growing. What keeps you motivated to continue doing this, aside from the tradition and that generationally you guys been doing this for so long? Because it would be so easy just to sell right now, sell for millions and millions, retire, not break your back, getting up at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning to tend to the farm and milk the cows and, what have you. So why are you still doing this?
For me, a lot of it is that it's rewarding in that we get to interact with our customers. And in doing so, customers are constantly saying, thank you for doing what you do. Or they share with us stories about how something as simple as chicken feet is helping with their son's autism. Or drinking our raw milk has changed their life because they were lactose intolerant, but now they can drink this. Or it's healing their gut. Or all of these different health issues that people deal with, that the food that we raise is changing their life for them. I can't think of another industry. There's not a lot of them where that is the case, where we get to have that relationship with them and get that kind of feedback and feel like we really are making a difference, at least in that area of our community.
So it's in part for the people. It's because you want to support this kind of healthy lifestyle through healthy food. And
giving people the choice to do that too, because if farms like us go out, we're really stuck with what's at the grocery store. And that's fine for a lot of people, but I still believe that we need to have choices for others who that doesn't work for them. They need to have a place to go. Right.
I can speak with from my own perspective where, when I met you guys, I remember this like today, Shane. You and my friend Peter were like, we came visiting. We started asking questions. We actually came in from the wrong side, not from where the store is, but from. And so someone kind of ushered us to you, and you guys showed us around, and you like opened up like where you grow the the green stuff for the animals, and it was just an amazing experience of like getting to know you guys, getting to know you, and seeing sort of like behind the scenes why you're doing this. And so that's a different type of experience in relationship when you talk to someone and how you and understand and see how you guys are treating the animals. How are you raising what you're raising? How are you doing that? And that's the type of experience that you don't get, especially with kids nowadays. Like they think chicken comes in these little boxes and or this packaging, right? And never seen a chicken and it's just so it's more than that. It's just like food, but also like that relationship and that relationship between farmer and consumer. Mm-hmm. So I definitely appreciate what you guys are doing. Let's get into, because you mentioned raw milk and so my daughter is so into it. And in fact, like this one time, like we ran out and my wife just went and bought like at a regular grocery store, like all organic whole milk. And she was like, "Oh, yucky. Isn't that real milk?" And so there's something to it, right? There's something that you get in that milk that just like tastes better. I mean, it's like, I compare it to like liquid ice cream. It's just like so tasty and creamy and rich and everything. But it's raw. So I wanted to talk to you about when we lived in New Jersey, raw milk was illegal. Like we could not even buy it. Some people were literally smuggling it from Pennsylvania, from the Amish country, because like that's where they could source it. And so, what are your thoughts on like, and why are you doing raw milk versus like pasteurized milk, and what's available at stores?
That's a really loaded question.
I'll let you unpack it a little bit.
So yeah, it might take time to kind of dissect that.
Right.
The first thing to know is it's important, I think, to have choices in food, right?
Right.
So while I am pro raw milk, somebody else may be in favor of pasteurized milk,
right?
And that's okay. We can be neighbors, we can live together, and this isn't something that divides us. It's a choice.
Right.
And it's nice in Utah that we have that choice, first of all, and I appreciate that, because in some states you don't, or at least not as liberally. It's my opinion and experience that raw milk provides all of the nutrition that we think of in milk. Because it has so many vitamins, so many minerals, it's so digestible for the body. Whereas once you pasteurize it, it really loses a lot of that value. And so in order to have the value that you think of conceptually with milk, you have to add it back in an artificial manner.
Right.
So that's one major difference without going terribly deep into it. As far as flavor, even if you just look at raw milk, it can change flavors dramatically based on climate, based on the type of cows you milk, based on the feeds that you give to those cows. So we're happy that our milk tastes good. We have quite a bit of feedback in the positive for the taste of the milk. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts. I don't know what you think about. Anything to add there?
Yeah, agree. A lot of it is the choice. For us, the reason we decided to jump into the dairy is that it's something that we want, and we don't love pasteurized milk. We feel like raw milk is the milk that we want for our family to drink, and we had the ability to be able to do that at our farm and then be able to sell that and share it with others. And so
right.
we felt that's what we wanted to do.
There's a lot of ignorance too, I would say, concerning milk. If you go to the grocery store, it's advertised in so many ways. You can get organic milk. You certainly can't buy raw milk in Utah in a grocery store, but that's an option elsewhere in Utah. You can just get the cheapest milk you can find. And what are the differences, right? A lot of times we just believe the labels that are on the milk. And then even when you look at pasteurization, there's ultra pasteurization,
right,
which really, really kills everything. I mean, the shelf life on some of those, which usually your organic milks are ultra pasteurized, they have a really long shelf life. And if I'm an informed consumer, the question I have is, wait a second, why does that one last so long?
Right.
And what does that mean to my body as a consumer if it lasts so long? Is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? And I think that's really important when you start to look at any food or any decision, I suppose. But as it applies to milk, I would want to know where my milk comes from very specifically.
Right. So I just kind of dovetailing to that, I remember when I saw ultra pasteurized milk, which was in cartons, and it was, I think my wife and I were traveling somewhere in Europe. I think we're in like Spain or France, and this thing was just like sitting on shelves, not even refrigerated. This thing was just sitting on shelves, right in the just sun was pounding on it, and and we looked at the shelf life on that, and it was like a year.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're like, how is that even possible? Like,
it has very little resemblance of milk.
Right. It's a white liquid, and beyond that, it's really not milk. And it's amazing how people are just like, oh, it says milk. Okay, so that's milk. And it not only it's only when you really try the real stuff is like when you're like, oh, okay, now I see the difference. Now I taste the difference. Mm-hmm. And so pasteurization, for those who like, typically people kind of, I mean, I think I understand what pasteurization is, where you heat up the milk and to a certain degree to kill off some of the bacteria in it. But along with that, what happens is it breaks down enzymes and a lot of other valuable things that your body wants, right? So that's kind of how I understand pasteurization. Am I off with how I think about it?
I think understanding what pasteurization is fairly simple. What that creates is maybe what people don't understand,
right?
Which you just got into, right? But on top of killing everything, one thing that most people don't think about is those things that are now dead still exist within the milk, right? They don't go away just because you killed them.
Right.
And that's what's causing a lot of people's health problems, is if you drink milk that has been pasteurized or ultra pasteurized, you have killed those enzymes. You have killed everything that's live about it. We talk about eating fresh fruits and vegetables, fresh spinach, things like that, because they're so healthy for us. Well, milk is really the same way. And so if you drink it fresh, if you drink it raw, whereas if it's a cooked product, now you've killed all the things that you wanted, and you're consuming them dead in a way that could contribute to a health problem.
Wow. Okay, that's definitely something that I have not thought of. And that is so true, because it's still in a product, and anybody has to still deal with it.
Yeah, right.
It could be just passive, or it could affect you in some way.
Sure. So if it's a dead product, your body could say, wait a second, how do I digest this? What am I supposed to do with this? Has no nutritional value, yet I still have to do something.
Right. Very interesting. I haven't considered that at all. So that itself is super enlightening. So do you find that because it has all this stuff that was killed and your body has to deal with, some people have like adverse reactions to it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not like they're immediate, however. And so now we're in a society where a lot of doctors will tell people, if you're having food allergies and you don't know why, one of the first things that they tell you to go off of is milk. But the doctor's mind, I think in Western medicine for the most part, don't distinguish between types of milk, right? They're not saying go off of pasteurized milk specifically. They're just saying no more milk products. And so there is a huge, I think, ignorance or lack of understanding of why this is a problem. Why is milk a problem?
Yeah, I've read recently some studies. A lot of times milk is attributed to ear infections, especially in children, or inflammation in that way. And that they're starting to think that it possibly is that dead bacteria that's left in the milk. There's no way to extract that, and that is causing irritation. And so, which I remember that as a kid, if I had a cold or something, my mom would always say, don't drink any milk, because there was just this connection with that it would aggravate it. Mm. And that there's been some studies done lately that are kind of linking that together. It's kind of interesting.
So some of the studies, but also do you guys find that based on your own experience? I mean, it sounds like partially yes, because like your mom told you not to.
Yeah, I don't remember as a kid ever thinking that, but I think it may be one of those things that's kind of passed down,
right?
You know, and that I think with raw milk, that's not a problem. I mean, if we're sick or our kids are sick or something, I'm like, you got to drink more milk.
Right.
You know, we want them to drink more raw milk because it has all those good bacteria, enzymes, probiotics.
Right.
Something your body can recognize and break down. And even the origin of pasteurization, I think sometimes gets a little confused, a little bit muddled, because a lot of our society says, well, I don't want to get sick, so I'm not going to drink raw milk. Well, in the 1920s, when industry was changing and growth was booming in places back in the eastern United States, they had a lot of problems where it was dirty and people didn't understand germs and the importance of cooling product and keeping it clean. And when you transport it, of course, by horse and cart, we didn't have cooling units in those. And so I believe in that point in time, pasteurization played a very important role in keeping people alive, because we just weren't handling milk in a safe and appropriate way. Today, I feel like we have a lot better understanding. So it's hard to group milk back to a 1920s type mentality, if that makes sense, where you say raw milk isn't safe today because it killed people in the 20s. Well, we're not in the 20s anymore, and we don't believe things. We have a much bigger understanding. Our awareness is different than it was in the 20s.
Old habits die hard, and one of them is we are in the 20s. We're just in 2020s, right?
Yeah, and it's time to start acting like it.
Exactly. But we have these things from 1920 where we thought like, oh yeah, there was no technology, like you said, refrigeration, processing, hygiene, just being able to process things without introducing any kind of pollutants or anything else. So that is, but yet we have that, Louis Pasteur came up with pasteurization. It's now, that should be like that forever. Yeah, they did, because, they had different conditions. And now that we can have sanitary conditions, we have the technology to do this, to everything that you just described, and it just takes it in a different direction, and yet we still kind of cling on to the...
absolutely.
I would add that all raw milk is not created equal.
Right.
So when we're speaking about cleanliness and sanitary conditions and things like that, wherever you purchase raw milk, you do want to know know about the dairy, know who's doing it, know what their practices are. We have very strict practices. We are a grade A dairy. We're licensed through the state. We do testing on the milk. The state does testing. So there is a lot to pay attention to, because it is a live food, which is amazing, but because of that, it can also
harbor
cause
bacteria,
problems too.
Yeah.
So
Right. No, that is so on the point what you just said, because it's easy to, and that's what we as humans, as people do. We kind of put labels on things, right? And then that label is kind of like, it's equivalent at all across the board, which is not the case, right? And it could be unsanitary conditions, could be some kind of things that will impact it in transport and in transition, right? You guys produce milk, test milk, process milk, everything on site at your farm. So there's fewer things that can go, and it's like it doesn't have to be put in a big cistern type of thing and shipped over somewhere else where it can be contaminated along the way and as it's being processed. So all those different things are important. So thank you for bringing that up, because that's something that's super important to remember. Why do you think people still have this archaic opinion about like raw milk, in terms of that fear of like, oh, raw milk, it's like, it has plenty of bacteria? Is it just pure non-awareness, ignorance, because they haven't been exposed to
social conditioning?
Yeah, part of it is social conditioning, what we've already discussed, where we've come from, what our background is,
right?
Our strong belief in how pasteurization saved so many people. But I also believe that part of it is marketing. Large industrial agriculture, specifically dairy, really doesn't want to go away from pasteurization for the reasons that you just mentioned, and that is, if you're milking 1,500 cows, and by the way, the average size of a dairy in the United States is somewhere around 400 to 500, that's a lot of cows to try and keep clean and maintain and all of that. And you add in transportation, where you move that milk from the farm to a tank in a truck, and then to a delivery point where it's transferred again into a bottling facility. And pasteurization makes sense to me in those cases. I would be a little concerned about drinking raw milk that was handled by so many different systems.
Right.
But it's hard to maintain a level of cleanliness to a high standard when you're milking so many cows. And in a confined environment, it's even more intense. And that to me is just common sense. So I don't believe the industry wants to see that go away. It's nice to have a backup plan for your sanitation called pasteurization, right? To where you do the best you can, but then at the end, you're just going to boil it anyway. So we're going to be okay.
Right.
And so I think that's a huge play. You look at major players in the dairy industry, they don't want to see pasteurization go away.
Right. I mean, that is, thank you for that perspective, because I haven't thought about it that way. And it's, again, it's those things that at scale, when these companies are doing these huge amounts of everything and they have to transport things, it just, those additional factors that impact it, just for them, pasteurization is basically risk management.
Right.
It's just lowering down the risk to something that, we're not going to have to recall 3 million gallons of milk or something like that.
Yeah.
Versus for you guys, this is not as high of a risk, because you have the control of the whole process of the whole facility, and you know exactly what how to process it. And you have experience, and you have control over those factors.
Yeah. That's a really good point. It allows for mega dairies too. It allows for what I feel like is an Americanism, in that we want things to be big and we want them to be productive,
right,
in the sense of quantity. And so, our largest dairy in the state of Utah that I'm aware of is nearly 10,000 cows.
Wow.
Can you imagine handling that kind of volume in animals? I can't. I milk 37 cows, and that's all I can handle. But if you're pasteurizing, it certainly contributes to being able to grow to that size, to have a production level that's enormous.
Right. So that brings me to a question on scalability of what you guys are doing. I mean, we're super lucky that you guys are here and doing this, and right on your farm, you got a store. We can just come in and buy this product and know the quality of the production. But how does that scale like the way you guys are doing, or basically would it scale by having many farms like you guys are operating, instead of having these sort of like massive mega milk production facilities?
Right. Which really is how farms used to be, right? Everybody had a kind of a farm in their community, or multiple farms in their community that serviced that area. And now we've gone to where we can transport things and just have one huge grower for almost an entire state. And so, as I look at the way we're producing milk, if you want to scale that, I think the very best way, in my opinion, to scale that is to increase the interest of other people who want to operate a farm such as that.
Right.
And you would go back to the old-fashioned style, where you had maybe a few little dairies that produced the highest quality milk and the cleanest cows you've ever seen, where health levels are so good you don't have to use antibiotics. It's
Right.
not a choice of I don't want to, it's why would I? I don't need to, because
Right.
my cows are healthy,
Right.
because my food is clean that I
Right.
give to the cows. And if you could station that type of an operation throughout communities where it was available,
Right.
that to me would be better, because you would have hands-on. The person who owns the farm, runs the farm, produces the milk, sells the milk. To me, that's verification.
So is it sort of like your opinion that in part the issue of these huge production facilities having to use antibiotics is because of the scale because you just can't maintain the quality of the cleanliness and I don't know, maintenance or care of it's like you said, 37 cows versus 10,000 cows. Like, how do you, like, even if there's not enough minutes, even if you would spend a minute per cow, you have 10,000 cows, you can't do that within 24 hours. So it sounds like the benefits of at scale production at these facilities were positive in terms of the quantity of the product, but at some point, because it was diminishing returns, because then at some point they had health issues because they're like so packed into smaller quarters and all the cleanliness and everything that goes along. So it sounds like then them minimizing that is by just adding antibiotics and so on.
Yeah, and the feed for the animals is a huge part of that too. At least we believe it is. Feedlots for beef cattle, also large dairies, especially they're feeding the cows grains because they're cheap. give them corn, give them soy, all these grains that are so cheap to produce. But we feel that cows are not supposed to eat those. When they do, it causes conditions called acidosis, which makes the cows ill, hence the antibiotics. And so it just causes a lot of problems that way. It's just like us as humans. Greens are so good for us to eat. And so that's why we have modeled what we do strictly on what we say grass only. We do grass only beef and lamb, and our cows for the dairy are the same. And because of the feed we give them, they are just healthy. We don't have sick animals. We don't have to worry about that sort of thing because of the conditions they're in and what we feed them.
Again, an interesting perspective, an interesting addition to that. You mentioned something, Shane, which made me think, which is create conditions in which more farmers, more people would want to do what you guys are doing at a small scale. How do we do that? I mean, it's not a sexy per se. It's backbreaking. I mean, I know I think I talked to you, Kristen, at some point, like, yeah, you have to get up at like 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. to like start, dealing with that. There's only so much. You can obviously automate some things. Maybe that's where some things can help. What do you see? How do we do that? How do we bring in more small farmers in local communities?
That is such a good question.
I know.
And really, I think today, because so many more people are aware of their food, we have let it slip away from us that there's so many more people interested in doing it, right? And it is backbreaking, but I would say that done properly, backbreaking is rewarding. It's not just simply exhausting, right? It's nice to be at the end of a day and be exhausted, but survey your efforts and say, I'm so proud of what can be accomplished through backbreaking work and how it can benefit my neighbor and everybody else.
Right.
So I think that in and of itself can be rewarding. One of the problems we've had is because farming in general has gone to such a large production model, it's not very profitable.
Right.
And so if you're asking me the question, how can we make it happen? Well, each of us has more power than we think. And that is because we all eat.
Right.
We all have to eat. And the way that you spend your money defines who you support.
Right.
In a very large way. If you say, well, the grocery store is a half a mile from where I live, and that's very convenient for me, and they have competitive prices, well, then you can't turn around and say, I wish we had more small local farms.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Right.
So you really have to say, what's important to me? Do I really believe in clean food? Do I really want local farmers in my area? Because if you do, then you may have to drive a little further. For you to get to our place, depending on traffic, probably takes 30 to 45 minutes.
30, 40 minutes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that's an expense to you both of time and money, right?
Right.
But by voting that way, you're saying, I don't want this farm to leave. I don't want them to sell for millions, as you alluded to earlier, and move away, because I appreciate it and I value it.
Right.
The more we do that, the more people will farm.
Well, what you said over here has just so many layers in terms of, it's very noble what you do, because it's not only because again, like you said, not huge profit margins. There's, you're not going to make gazillions of dollars. So it is driven by your moral compass and by your beliefs. And I mean, that's the kind of the thing that's kind of hard to sell to someone who would want to start a farm, right? Because you either have it, or you have to be in a community, on a place that kind of encourages that and nurtures that, because that's your belief, right? Like you say you stay on the farm and you work hard because you believe that you're helping others, and that is not part of, like, typically that doesn't factor as much in business, in businesses. So that's special people can do that.
I think, though, that as human beings, there's something inherent in us that loves being with animals and getting your hands dirty and, doing something with the soil. And again, working hard during the day and having something to show for it at the end of the day.
Right.
And so I think if we can educate consumers about the difference between the food that's going to come from a farm local to them versus the grocery store, and get them to understand, yes, the price is more, but that it's worth it, and to appreciate that and understand that there are those people who will jump in and say, I'm going to farm, because it's just something in them that they just love. I know for Shane, sitting in a cubicle all day doing office work would drive him nuts. It's
Right.
just not him. For some people, that works for them, and we need people like that. But that's not what he wants to do. And so that's a big part of it, too, about why we do what we do, is that we value the lifestyle and that it works for us and it's important to us.
So hopefully there's enough of people that would like to pursue the same kind of lifestyle.
I think there is.
Yeah.
And then it would be just a matter of creating awareness and some kind of support structure for people to start. For instance, if I would want to start a farm, I wouldn't even know where to begin because it's such a huge undertaking. And so it seems like the ramp to start that would be like huge. But I think that's where government could step in and help out with that in part by maybe creating or subsidizing some of these programs to teach and to entice people to start a farm, right? So we have, and what kind of resilience does that bring when we would have many small farms versus fewer of these huge processing ones, right? Because we always hear these, salmonella contaminated salad, and they recall gazillions of tons of product. Again, because it was at a single facility. If it would be spread, it would be smaller farms all around. There'll be more resilience in that, and fewer incidents like that would happen. So even from that perspective, that would be a great thing to have.
Yeah. There's so much to talk about there. I don't know. I think undesirable effects can happen to anybody. Right. So you talk about, for example, a salmonella outbreak or something like that. Right. In leafy greens from a huge facility. Does that mean if everybody grew their own greens, that would never happen? No, not necessarily.
Right.
So there are other values in doing that. I have a little trouble with putting what's important to me in the government's hands. I think the government plays an important role in our society, but there's a line there somewhere. And really, if it's market driven, if so many people came to my place and said, I want to buy your milk, that I said, you know what? I can't produce more milk in the quality that I want anymore. And so then I approach you and say, hey, you've talked about wanting to do milk. Look at all these people that want to buy your milk. And so that really is self-driven. It's self-created.
Right.
On the other hand, I don't know that the government would really want a lot of small farms all over because they're all about regulation and they're all about control, at least the way I perceive it today. And if you said you can go visit a dairy that produces an enormous amount of milk, or you can go to 10 dairies that produce a small amount of milk, well, that's a headache for them, right?
Right. Well,
so they're not really going to be supportive, I don't think.
Right.
That's
a very good point, because then on their side, it would have to scale in terms of inspectors and the whole process of getting out there and ensuring that there's enough quality. So, but I do like what you're saying, that vote with your dollars, vote with the money, and create market forces to really benefit the farmers and future farmers to get into that, right? But I think the problem is still that people have to change perception about quality of food, because when you compare a box to a box to a box to a box, and it just goes ad nauseum, right? And they all look colorful and pretty and all of that stuff, and so it's hard for people to see the differences, especially when I pour it in. It looks white. I mean, I know how your milk differs, because it's so rich. It's has this yellowish, has this goldenish color, the cream and everything. And I just want to comment, and I'll bounce a question back to you guys. I want to comment on price. When I started telling about your farm in my circles, and people were like, well, how much is a gallon of milk? I said, $9. I'm like, what? $9? Are you crazy? $9? I'm like, you have no idea what you're buying, man. It's it's I can separate the cream. I can make butter out of it. Try making butter out of your milk. It tastes like melted ice cream. I'm describing these things to people, and finally, when they try it, it's only when they try it that they see what we're talking about. They feel it, that they taste it, right? And if you look at it from that perspective, I want to make my own butter, which takes literally 5 minutes. You just separate the cream, put it in your Ninja blender or whatever blender, and 5 minutes later you got butter. So if you add the price of that and milk and butter, like you're getting a great deal. So I think it's a matter of perspective, and people need to kind of look at that and see, see and feel the quality. So again, it's going to be just kind of spreading the awareness of like what quality food is.
I think a lot of it too is where we place our priorities. We follow a lot Joel Salatin at Polyface Farms, and one of my favorite quotes of his, he says, "People complain about the price of the food that I sell, but have they priced cancer lately?"
Right.
And that it's a lot of times if we don't invest in the foods that are good for us now, we're going to end up paying for it later in the medical bills or doctor visits and that sort of thing. And we'll have people that will complain, "Oh, your ground beef is like $6 a pound," but they've got the latest iPhone and, all the gadgets that go with that. So it really is just people's priorities. And when they understand the benefits of it, then they'll shift that priority and more of their budget can go to the food that's good for them.
Yeah, unfortunately, people are, they want now, right? They want immediate gratification and pushing the risk further in the future. Like if we would know with, let's say, cars and internal combustion, and I'm not saying like we shouldn't have it. Like, yes, it was a phase where we needed it to mechanize things and whatnot. But if we knew like how that's going to affect our planet and everything, we'd be like, oh, like 100 years from now, this is going to be really bad for the whole planet. Right. People didn't care, but they're like, well, I need now. I need I need this right now. So I think that's a kind of problem in systematic mechanism of this, that we have this immediate gratifications that we're looking for versus kind of pushing the risk and everything else kind of back on a back burner. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with health. Like, I'm going to buy something cheap right now, food-wise, but again, like you said, later on, if that's going to come back and cause cancer or some kind of malady in your system that you have to deal with, it's going to be the time, doctors, and worry and stress and all of that. Yeah. So how do we fix that? How do we change that perspective?
Well, one suggestion I would have is definitely through education, through people becoming more connected with what they're doing. Because you're right, we're all guilty of immediate gratification, right? We focus on what we want and not what we need. And we certainly don't view what you have suggested, the effects of our choices today on tomorrow. The reality of food, however, is you're going to spend the same amount either way. You're either going to pay $9 for a gallon of milk, and you're going to avoid, hopefully, some health problems because of that, or you're going to spend a couple of bucks on a gallon of milk, and you're going to pay the rest to the doctor later.
Right.
Or medicine later.
Yeah.
I mean, look at our pharmaceutical companies. They're not hurting for dollars.
Right.
Right. And so we're funding that, and we get to decide where we want to spend our money. You're going to spend roughly the same amount of money either way.
Don't you find, too, that the food, if food is real food and grown the right way, it's more satiating, too. I don't feel like your body needs as much of it.
You don't have to founder yourself on food when it's got value in it.
Yes.
Well, it's that argument of high density, high nutrition in food, right? And when your body feels like, oh, I got the stuff that I needed, versus like if you start eating something that's devoid of any kind of nutrition, and then you need to stuff your face and your body with ton of it, because then your body physically feels like it's full, but still empty. It's like eating cardboard, right? You can fill yourself up, but there's nothing in it that will help your body, right? Mm-hmm. But again, we're fighting against the human nature of like, here's a bigger pile, here's a smaller pile. I'm going to go for the bigger pile because I see quantity and it's a better deal, right? And so we're fighting against nature.
Yes.
And
it's a little bit frustrating because I'll see just our society in the United States, that it's celebrated when the farmers in our country are able to produce food at such cheap prices.
Right.
That's what they celebrate, that it doesn't cost the average American very much to feed themselves.
Right. And
I don't think that that's the right way to go about it.
Right. It's it's on the one hand, you have the worries of scalability. How do we grow enough food for everyone? Our population continues to grow on the whole planet. And so there's like worries like, well, in 2040, there's going to be so many billions of people. Like, how are we going to feed all of them? So everything goes into that quantity. Like, that's why grains and corn syrup and all that stuff finds its way like everywhere. Like, I was shocked recently. I looked at toothpaste and there's corn syrup in toothpaste.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, are you kidding me? Why? Again, filler, cheap, volume.
Yeah.
You see, now it's 99 cents for a tube of toothpaste. I mean, it's just, again, it's going to be a lot of education, a lot of forces. And how do we bootstrap that though? Because it takes money to produce something, to make people aware, to get people. The only thing that I see that's kind of working on a plus side of it is people's health. People, like, at some point when you become ill, you're like, what do I need to change? It's kind of like that. I don't know if it's an old adage, but like when something really strikes you, like your health, that's you have that moment of clarity where you're like, oh, I should probably change my lifestyle, right, or something, right? And then you have that moment, and then you go back. But I don't wish anybody to need to go to that place in order to change how they think about food and quality of food. So
yeah, that is the sad truth about it, though. We don't tend to change until it's too late for us.
Yeah. Not as resilient of a species, in that respect. Again, just like you said, food is just, we just got used to these prices that are just like so cheap, and we just see this immediate equation of like this much for this much, and that's a great deal. You lock it in, your brain is primed, and that's what you think from now on, that this is how it should be, and you don't see. Even if the quality changes, you go back in, you continue eating that stuff, and later on it affects your health, and you're just like, those are like invisible things until it's so bad for you that you need to go and see a doctor. So, yeah. So let's talk about how it's, because there's just such a small percentage of farmers in the country. I forget what it is, but at some point I think someone said like 2 or 3% of the population of the whole country is farmers. And the society and where we are in civilization right now is like, people are moving out to the cities, and because that's where careers and business and everything and easy wealth, so to speak, is. So that's another thing that we're kind of fighting against in terms of, how do we bring those people back, or how do we entice them to start farms? Aside from like maybe the pendulum swinging so much to one side where they go and experience that life in the city, they get sick, and then at some point they realize they need to go back to the nature or go get out of the city and then kind of reset their lifestyle. And so, what is it that you guys see in your circle that you that makes you positive about the possibility of what you're doing, encouraging other people to do the same, to start a farm? Or
one side is that we get requests all the time for jobs at the farm, internships at the farm. Can I come see what you're doing? Can you teach me about it? Can you come speak at this event? There's just in the state of Utah, what's exciting is that we just attended the Utah Farm and Food Conference in Cedar City. That's put on by Red Acre Center, and they hold one of those every year. And it's getting all of these, everybody that's from beekeepers to homesteaders to small farms, people who are just starting out, get them together and share ideas and what worked for you, and I'm gonna try this, and how should I do it, and just that sharing of ideas and showing that there is an increase in demand. I think it was awesome to see that the food scene in Utah is becoming pretty cool, and we're getting a lot more options and possibilities there. And it's encouraging to see that and to see people interested in it.
Right.
The more consumers that are interested, the more demand there is, the more farms will start to show up.
Right. And I think it's, again, like with easier access to information. Of course, with that comes also disinformation, right? And that's another thing that's an issue. But, you mentioned like Joel Salatin, and there's others who are kind of preaching this, and they're sharing and they're teaching, how to do farming and how to do these things without destroying the topsoil and all of that. So hopefully that proliferation of that information is going to get to enough people that enough people will want to pursue this, and maybe in time it's going to be so profitable that people will this is going to grow by leaps and bounds. I don't know, but I think like it's just going to be continuing on with the awareness of people like learning that, hey, food is medicine too, like you can make yourself healthy or sick with food, and that awareness is what's going to hopefully at some point change. But do you truly believe that what you're doing is scalable? Like could we have thousands of 1,000 farms like yours nationwide to do this locally?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you can look at different phases of it, but even if you say, well, what would 1,000 more farms do to our water supply? Well, actually, it would help it, because if you farm in an appropriate way, then you're creating a culture where you don't need as much water on there. If you plow your land every year and you replant the same crop and you spray the same fertilizer, these types of things deteriorate our soils, right? To where now you need more inputs to survive.
Right.
And we're talking about a type of farming in which you need less inputs to survive.
Explain.
Well, if you've ever been to a large-scale dairy hog farm, which is indoors, cattle feedlot for beef, they have so many inputs and so much waste output that even beside the land they're actually raising animals on, they've killed hundreds of acres around them because they have lagoons of manure which is contaminated. You can't use that for fertilizer. It kills things. And in this situation, you could have multiple species and crops on the same farm that coexist and contribute to each other in a scenario where growth abounds, right? You could take a feedlot which is desolate, wipe it clean, and start over with a multi-species, multi-cropped situation where now it looks like a jungle of life.
Right.
And now you're saying, well, does that jungle use as much water? Absolutely not.
It's funny you mentioned multi-species, and how that critical is in that ecology of the system. I recently had a guest on a show, Shubhendu Sharma. He's a TED Talk fellow, and he was talking about how to grow forests. High density forest, like super fast, and one of the things I asked him, well, how is this what you're proposing different than the way normally it's done? It's the ecosystem. It's like competition between shrubs and these types of trees and this types of systems, and then the mycelium, the fungus that lines in and all of that contributes to, it's a system. It's not just like you're gonna till the soil and just plant saplings and boom, you have forest. It's the whole ecology and the whole system that supports the growth of that has to be taken into consideration. And that's kind of like what we kind of are getting away with, the monocultures, right? In these huge industrialized farming where you have just fields and fields and fields of one type of crop and nothing else. And how is that impacting the whole ecology of that? So
I remember the first season we decided we were going to raise meat chickens, do more of them to sell, and we followed the polyphase model of the chicken tractors. And so we had them out on our pasture up the street from our farm, and we did that through the summer. And it was the next season we looked at a Google map, Google View
photo of the year before and the current year.
You could see the greener squares as they went along of where we moved the tractor each time. It was amazing to see how much better the pasture was just because of where those chickens were for a short amount of time, and how much better it was for, not only the soil, but the grasses and everything right there.
Yeah. Which is now you're talking a higher vegetation amount to feed animals with the same water input.
Right. Right. So everything kind of interlocks, right? And so do you guys believe that the pendulum's going to swing from this kind of extreme of like these mega factories? So you guys think that we're going to get back into these smaller farms?
I think we'll get back into smaller farms. We've seen that recently. More people are interested in it. More people are doing it. Will the big factories go away in the sense that the pendulum will swing completely the way it was? No, I don't think so. There's too many people on this earth to feed, and too many of them are not going to pay attention to what they're eating. And for that reason, we'll coexist. There'll be large industrial farms and there'll be small farms that provide a wholly different product no matter what you're talking about. I mean, if you've eaten a tomato from the grocery store and you've grown your own tomato at home, there's really no argument there, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. No, it's like, I think you mentioned even in one of your blog posts, which is like, you have access to these massive strawberries that look so appealing and they're like, just bright and perfect and everything. And then you take a bite and you're like, ew. It's terrible. It's like,
right?
it's like, this doesn't taste like anything. It's just like, it's like it's false advertising, right? And like to the point that, I've heard that they're trying to modify like even apples right now so they don't bruise as easily and things like that. So they, again, it's that appeal of everything is perfect and
Yes.
But for every advantage you gain, there's an effect.
Right.
And it's a disadvantage. And so all of our commercially raised beef are flavorless. So what do? We just put seasoning on them.
Right.
And so, you get to choose. But no, I don't think large farms will ever go away.
Right. Let's talk about a little bit about, this whole thing, organic and that whole thing and, the big label, what it is. And I believe that the intent from my maybe just limited visibility into this, like I think maybe the intent was there to kind of provide that option, but hasn't it been a little bit hijacked maybe, or like what are your opinions on organic? And I know that you guys make a distinction like what organic versus the way you guys do it. Can you talk about that a little bit, like why you're shying away from going through this, this is all organic certified?
Well, initially we shied away from organic because of the additional cost and additional government oversight, which is not something we were excited about. And as we looked into it more and through the years, it seems like the organic label has become diluted. It doesn't mean what it used to mean, because as these large food companies have realized the popularity of the term organic, they have affected legislation to change what that actually means anymore. A lot of people are not very educated as to what organic means. They'll look at organic produce and say, well, I'm going to buy that because it hasn't been sprayed with anything. Well, that's not true. There are organic pesticides that are sprayed on.
Organic approved pesticides.
Organic approved pesticides. Mm-hmm. So it's still sprayed with something, probably not as harmful as the non-organic.
Or not in as high of consistencies.
Not as
concentrations.
And when it comes to meat, it doesn't necessarily dictate how the animal is treated. Labels can be misleading.
Right.
So even something for free-range eggs, the hens in this big building may have access to a 5x5 square of concrete, and that's it. But they're free-range, right? And so we've always encouraged our customers, like, will you please just come to our farm? Come and see how our animals are raised. You can talk to us. You can ask questions. Wherever you are, go to the source and ask about it, and don't just trust a label, but be educated on it. Right,
and I think that's what the beauty and appeal is for me and my family, like, shopping at your places, because again, that openness that you guys had, like, hey, come and see how we feed animals, see how they are living, like, versus like when you just encapsulate things into a label and you're like, oh, organic. Well, what does that mean, right? Because it's like it's not a stamp that's equal and across everywhere, because this is going to be implemented differently over here and over here and over here. But by supporting local farmers like yourselves, where you have access as a customer to kind of go and see, then you have firsthand proof. You have that fact in front of you that this is, I see, like, that's why when I tell others about your farm, that's why I tell them, like, look, you just go and see over there for yourself. You don't have to trust a label with pretty print and colors and sparkly stuff, like, to convince you that this is quality. You can go and see yourself. Right. And I think that's a key. And that goes back to the beauty of, like, if we had more farms like yours all over the place, people could go and inspect and see firsthand. Right. And that in turn would also just motivate the farmers to continue to have that quality.
Yes, agreed. And that's not to say, I don't want to say organic isn't good either, because, there's things that I buy that are organic because I know that maybe glyphosate wasn't sprayed on whatever grains and stuff that are included in this organic product.
Right.
but that I feel like there are farms like ours that are doing it, like we'll say beyond organic. That, it's not just a label.
Maybe you should coin that label.
We're going even better than that. And I've heard that in other places, but, that it's a little bit more than that.
Right.
And some people will say, well, I buy this at Whole Foods and you guys aren't organic. We're like, well, no, but come and see what we do again.
Right. So. And again, it's that awareness, it's self-education, right? It's like we hope to like one of the reasons why I do this show is because I want to share these kind of stories and this kind of information from firsthand, right? But it takes inquisitiveness of people to want to watch something like this and listen and self-educate. And the information is out there. But the beauty of it is, like, if a farm is local farm that you support, you have that ability to talk to the owners. You have the ability to see for yourself and really inspect it, versus like you have a label that's supposed to mean something by government regulation, but no one will be ever able to like fully enforce that and make it consistent. And this is organic, but it's from like some other country maybe, and who knows what's happening in between here and there, versus like I come to your store, like it's here. I'm like half an hour away, not like 4,000 miles away. And so that's another beauty of being able to do that.
The biggest value I feel like in the organic label is not to the consumer. It's as a marketing tool for large companies who have the ability to produce large amounts of food under the organic label. That's its biggest value, a marketing tool.
Okay.
It's, in Michael Pollan's book, he calls it industrial organic, is how he describes it, because it's just large companies that are pumping out the same food, but just switching
slightly different.
Put
a label on it, raise the price.
Right.
Now you've increased your margins.
Right. So it's just trying to extract more money from the consumer who is just not as educated about it. And in part the problem is that we just live in such a high hyperspace and of like fast-paced life is what I wanted to say, is that people just don't have the time or don't want to. Again, that's probably not fully true. Like, if you want to focus on something and learn something, it doesn't take that long to find out, right? It's not like you're going to have to go to 4 years of college to find out what organic means.
Yeah.
If you spend a little bit of time, and you will find out what it means. But
it goes back to the immediate gratification, I think. It speaks to each of us. We all have exactly the same amount of time in a day.
Right.
So it's not a matter of not having time. That's more of an excuse. It's really honestly about not caring. What you're saying is, I don't care enough about my food to pay attention. Really, I care more about this other thing that I'm paying attention to.
Yeah. So it's priorities, right? It's like, what is important to me, and if I'm. And again, the problem is, I think, is the delayed reaction of what happens to our bodies. Our bodies are just so resilient that they will just deal with a lot of stuff until they start breaking. And then when they start breaking, sometimes it goes really fast and it's critical, right? But until then, it's like, it's fine. I'm still okay, right? And so it's like, I think it's that forethought, and again, just going back to education, like treat this vessel right now well, so that it lasts for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about some of the stuff that you guys like. So you mentioned that you started dairy at some point. So that wasn't initially from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so what made you do that? And can you tell me a little bit more about how was the process? How was it to deal with standing it up and the regulations and dealing with what have you learned? How was that experience?
Well, we started out selling meat about 10 years ago. We started selling meat to customers. I mean, we always had meat that we shared amongst family and whatnot. And that just honestly kind of grew on its own. And we built a store and a poultry processing facility. And we started selling milk from another dairy, raw milk from another dairy. And that was okay. How long did we do that for? A couple of years?
Yeah, a couple of years.
And then they got tired of it, of just the regulations and all of that. And so they decided to go out of business. And so that left us saying, what are we going to do? In the meantime, we got our own family milk cow again. We'd had one before because we did not want to drink pasteurized milk. We wanted our own milk. So we did that. And probably about a year of deliberation on whether we should start our own dairy or not. I think a lot of it was we really feel strongly, again, about choice, and that We want to offer that to people. We interacted with so many customers during that 2-year period where we were selling raw milk and saw how important it was to them. Honestly, also, there is a business side to it because there is income that comes in from that. We find when people come to buy milk, they're also going to buy meat and eggs and those things too. So all of that went together. And yeah, we decided to go for it. So.
They complement each other. Really, I think our whole existence as a farm is attributed to a great testament to what we've already talked about, and that is the consumer. We've been farming forever. My grandpa ran a dairy. We weren't ignorant of how to do dairy. I grew up with a milk cow. But our existence really started with us deciding, hey, we have some extra cows, and some people were interested, and we grew from buying a couple of freezers and moving the car out of the garage, and people would line up in our driveway on a Saturday, and we were peddling our products out of our garage to what we are today. And really, we owe that to the amazing people that really do care about where their food comes from, that really pay attention, and that are willing to spend the amount of money it takes to acquire that food.
Right.
And milk has come that way as well, I would say, to where people say, you know what, I value that milk and I will pay $9 a gallon.
Yeah.
The idea that we're getting rich off doing it is completely false. If anybody wants to try it, they're welcome to. But we can sustain ourselves in the sense that it's a viable business.
Okay.
And so that's important, obviously, because we couldn't do it without the income to supply.
Right. And it just tires me every single time when people have these ideas of like, oh, too much profit or something, like as if like, well, you need, unfortunately, or fortunately, money is energy, and you just need that to sustain a business. There's nothing wrong with it. It's like,
sure.
Be happy that you have access to this kind of food and this kind of product. So again, it's just a mindset, I think, that people have to kind of come to that place where they prioritize what they value, and they're willing to pay for it. And it's not like it's that much more. It's like that's what kills me. It's not like your product is like, oh, it's 500% more. It's like it's just a little. Even if, and like I said, if you make your own butter out of it, it's like you're breaking even. Or if you're making if you would buy a organic milk in the store and organic butter, you're going to spend more than $9.
Yeah.
So it's not more expensive. Speaking of butter, let's go. Let's talk about that.
Butter is a great topic.
Because I still don't understand, like, why is selling was it like raw butter, or like why is it still illegal?
Raw.
How come you can sell raw milk and not?
And the laws vary by state.
From state.
Right.
So each state gets to determine that. Some states like California, you can sell raw kefir, sour cream, butter, cream, all kinds of stuff.
Right.
Utah only allows for the sale of raw milk currently, and raw cheeses that have been aged for at least 60 days.
Okay.
That's it.
Why is that? What's happening with this?
Well, really, at least in my opinion, it's really dictated by the large players in the marketplace, right? They like it the way it is. They like their control, and they really don't want it to change.
So it's competition. Like, they don't want that extra competition.
Yeah. Your large industrial dairy producers and their conglomerates, right? Your large cheese makers, they have systems in place, and so that works for them. And we're nothing as a voice in legislature compared to them and their lobbyists. And so, by and large, it's stayed the way it is for a long time.
Right.
That's about to change in Utah, is my prediction. We're going to start seeing laws that will allow for raw cream very soon, and for raw butter. And then you're going to be back to price points, because we don't have the economies of scale advantage that they do.
Right.
And so whatever butter costs you now, if you want it from a local farm, it's going to cost you 2-3 times that much to produce. But those types of things are going to start to change. I do think the answer to why is it that way, really, it's a market share. We have some large businesses in agriculture that dictate a lot of what happens. So your choices, again, are chosen by them. They're dictated by them.
Speaking of sort of like the political aspect of it, in terms of how it got, what's being done to kind of pass the legislation to introduce this to the market as a raw cream, raw butter. Is there what's in the works?
Last year we worked a lot on this during the legislative session. A few months before that, so in 2018, I had contacted our representative Kim Coleman out of frustration because during the summer months we have more milk than we can sell because the cows give more when the weather's warmer, they give less when it's cold.
Right.
We don't have as much of a demand in the summer. People are on vacation, their kids are out of school, and we feed the milk to our pigs or different things like that. But I thought, man, it'd be nice if we could just sell the cream. So I just emailed her, and the next day she actually showed up at our store and said, what can I do to help? Like, let's do this. So she drafted a bill to allow the sale of raw cream and raw butter. We took it to the session, we spoke, we had amazing customer support. We worked with a couple of other very small raw milk dairies in the state, along with Red Acre Center in Cedar City. They work on a lot of small farm and food bills each year. And we took it all the way to the last night of the session, and the bill was supposed to be voted on. It was the next in line, and they leapfrogged it for this Gila monster, making the Gila monster the state reptile. And they voted on that, and then they were done.
They closed the session.
I was like,
Right.
Oh, we were right there. And I believe it would have passed. It would have been done. We had a lot of opposition from two of the major dairy organizations in the state, who kept saying it's too dangerous, but we had the support of the Utah Department of Ag and Food and the Health Department. We're both on board with it.
Okay, well that's good.
So it's a little frustrating. It felt like at times it's like we're a farm and we have other large farms and like we're fighting against each other, and it seems silly with the way that dairy farming is going overall these days. We really should be working together on this, but that's what happened. So this year, throughout the year, Representative Coleman worked with these large organizations to try and get their support, was able to do so. This year it's HB 134, I believe it is. It looks like it should go through just fine. So that's what we're hoping for, and we should be able to sell raw cream and raw butter here sometime this year. That's what we're hoping for.
I'm looking forward to that. I mean, in the meantime, I think those who really want that, butter and everything, they can just buy your milk and literally just skim the cream and just blend it. In 5 minutes, you got butter like you wouldn't believe.
But it was encouraging to see how much support we got from not only our customers, but other small dairies and their customers who came and spoke and emailed and just said, what can we do? And because of all of that work last year, we will hopefully get the result we were hoping for this year, and then we'll go back again and just keep chipping away at it.
Right. Well, you think it's you think somebody threw a curveball with that last minute? What is it? What kind of monster was it?
Gila monster.
Gila monster.
Gila monster.
Yes, we have a state reptile now.
Well, it's apparently more important than healthy food.
Politics is what it is, and if you choose to be involved, that can't be surprising.
We always walk away and say, this is why we farm instead of politics.
Something we've discussed before that's nice about farming and nature and animals is that they're true to who they are, right? If you plant a corn seed, by golly, it's going to grow into a corn stalk.
Right.
It's not going to turn into anything else. A cow's always going to be a cow, and she'll always act like a cow. But you go to people, and especially to politics, and the game changes sometimes.
It's true. Well, I don't blame you for willing to work with the animals more than
you can count on the animals and what they're going to do.
Will not step outside of the nature of its being.
Yeah.
Gosh, what other messages would you like to share with others who are listening to this in terms of the future of food security and of food, because that's one of the topics that I think is easy easiest avenue to people's hearts in terms of revisiting food as a source, because we have this belief that food is going to be always there. It's always accessible because we have all these supermarkets and everything. But literally everything is just kind of like on demand delivered. A lot of these, things is like, within 3 days, if nothing gets delivered, everything is cleared out. And we've witnessed that when we had hurricanes impacting parts of the country, right? Where you see everything is just cleaned out because, but yet we have this perception, people have this perception that it's always going to be there. It's always, it's always going to be delivered from some magical place. And so having local farms supporting the local ecosystem, I believe, just builds that extra resistance to that food security. What are your thoughts on that aspect?
We have always said we can't feed everybody, and we encourage people to grow their own food. I mean, whatever you can do. If you can have a handful of chickens in your backyard just for eggs, that's a great way to go. Or even if you grow things in your windowsill, you have a little vegetable garden or things like that, go for it.
Right.
Do it. Yeah, having chickens is going to cost you more than buying the eggs at the grocery store, but they're going to taste better and they're going to just be healthier for you, and you have them there. So again, if there ever was a problem, well,
right.
You have eggs and you also have some chickens and
right.
you need some meat or whatever.
Right.
There's things that we can do where we can take more control over our food, instead of handing that responsibility off to unknowns, corporations, companies.
Right.
Instead.
I think in a way we're blessed over here in Utah because it's possible for people to do that in places. I mean, I saw like some neighbors that literally have chickens, right. Little chicken coops in their backyard.
And you're from like New Jersey and whatnot. And I don't know in New Jersey or Brooklyn, right. You do something like that. But
yeah, and so that's why it was shocking to me, because I think a lot of people in like states like Maryland or New Jersey or New York, like they wouldn't even know that it's possible for them to do, and probably in some places it's probably impossible. Obviously, in urban areas, you're not going to be able to do that. But in here, you have that freedom, and I think it's an amazing thing.
I think you always have options, though. You always have options as to how you behave and support things. And in our fast-paced society, we lose sight of the fact that conveniences create complacency.
Right.
And so we find ourselves sometimes in that situation where our immediate gratification creates a situation we never intended to be in. And our food is that way today.
Right.
To where because I can stop at McDonald's and pay $1 for food, that's really convenient for me. But it creates a whole problem where now I'm complacent. I really don't understand where that food came from. And not understanding and not knowing is a license to somebody else to do whatever they want with my food. And that's not okay. We need to get back on the wagon, and we need to pay attention instead of being complacent.
Right. I have kind of two questions that I want to queue up and not forget. One of them is, I want to kind of put it towards the end of our conversations, about how would you guys recommend, like if someone wanted to start a farm, like what some of the tips and your pro tips that you would give, like let's say if you wanted to step back into the time machine and go back to the time that you weren't farming. Of course, that's kind of weird with you guys because you guys always farm, so for generations. But let's say you go back to that, 0.0 where you haven't farmed yet, and you wanted to learn and start something. Where would someone go? How would you what would you recommend? Where do they start?
Oh, wow. I don't know. There is a lot of information nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the nice part is small farming is really not the competitive nature that you would think of in other industries. For example, like phones, right? You go to buy a phone and it's really competitive, and they probably don't collaborate efforts. Apple's not saying to LG, hey, look, this works really well for us. You should try this.
Right.
Here's something we discovered. They don't do that
right.
in industry, but farming is very unique in that way. As a small farmer, I approach another small farmer and say, I'm having trouble with this item. And they say, here's something we've tried, that we collaborate very well,
right.
and I think are very approachable to a novice or a startup. to where you could go to somebody that has a little experience and say, I want to intern with you because honestly, I want to do exactly what you're doing. And that farmer's likely to say, great. I think it's fantastic.
Why do you think that is, though? I mean, aren't you creating your own competition?
Because we're not money driven. That's why I think it is. Because if I were picking a profession based on my income, I would never have picked farming, ever. Right? There are values that far exceed money that I gain by farming.
Right.
Because I'm family oriented, because I get to work with my wife all the time. Who else gets to do that? And it doesn't work for everybody.
Right.
And I get that. But it works for me, and that's what I want for my life. It's what I want for my family. And that's why I think. Because no farmer really is financially driven.
Right. And that's, it's more of a collaborative effort in that respect and in that openness. And just knowing you guys for some time, kind of on and off when I kind of visit you, and sometimes when we have a chat, or like when I see you, feed animals and we get to interact a little bit, it's that openness and that makes me hopeful, because one of the things that I work with is someone else who's working on a concept of open source hardware, meaning that they design things for farmers, like a tractor or all sorts of equipment, and those designs they share for free on the internet. So those who cannot buy a $250,000 combine or some kind of tractor or something, in poorer countries, they can literally build it themselves, and to the point that they can fix it themselves because they can understand how it works. And that openness is what he is sort of like preaching, that this is what's going to change the world as well, because it's going to be, instead of competitive, it's going to be collaborative. And that kind of like, and I'm mentioning this because it kind of echoes in my mind what you're doing, saying like, hey, if you're a farmer, if you're a startup, come and I'll share my knowledge, and because again, it's going to make everything stronger. And it has not just like this one benefit of growing food, but changing people, changing like perspectives, and then there's a whole community around it as well, right? So it's like it has multiple factors and multiple effects on society.
Absolutely.
And so I was gonna do that as a last thing, but I want, because before then I wanted to ask you about like different types of animals that you guys have and what you've learned about, because there's like different types of beef that you have, and so we're just gonna kind of segue into that for a little bit, if you don't mind. So tell me about, like, because you started raising beef, and you chose specific kinds, and then you have specific types of cows as well, and I'd love to talk about that a little bit, just to kind of educate myself a little bit more, and just share it with others. So what kind of cows do you have, and why did you choose the ones that you have?
Well, for beef, we have Coriani cattle, honestly, because that's what we had. Like, that's what we were raising, and we always liked the meat from them. As we looked into it, we found that it actually is a really beneficial meat. It's labeled one of the slow food
arc of taste.
Arc of taste beef. Has more flavor to it, very lean. We also sell Angus beef, again, completely grass-fed. We have those two. Our milk cows are Jersey cows, which we like because the cream content is so good in those. The flavor of the milk is good, and we can milk them once a day, and they do great that way, which is great for us because it gives us a little bit more time to attend to other things with once a day milking.
Which is, by the way, very unheard of in the dairy industry.
Which what, milking
milk
once
a
a day?
Cow once a day, yeah. And it works for us because of our model, because of our feed inputs. We're not trying to push production, we're trying to push quality.
Okay.
And so that works for us. A large dairy, if they decided to switch from 2, or sometimes some of them milk 3 times a day, and change nothing else but milk once a day, they would have enormous difficulties. That wouldn't work. But it does work for us.
Yeah, works for us.
Why would they have difficulties? What would be
because they're production based. So everything that they do on the farm is a derivative of how can I push my pounds of production in milk higher and higher. So if on the input side you're pushing production, and on the other side you're only milking once a day, well, that's not going to work because the capacity of an udder is only so big.
Right.
And so you really have to decrease the front side if you're going to decrease the back side, if that makes sense.
Right.
If you're going to drop how often you draw milk out, then you need to drop how you have that cow produce milk.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. What about chickens?
We have chickens. That would probably be one piece of advice. Anyone starting out, I would not start with poultry.
Well, laying hens are great.
Laying hens
are very forgiving. They're hardy.
Yeah.
Meat chickens are a different breed. You can, of course, eat a laying hen chicken, but their body is designed with very little meat. They're lean. They look like me. And if you killed me, you'd be disappointed. And that's the way laying hens are.
Yeah.
Meat chickens have a lot more muscle on them, a lot more to eat there, but they're not as hardy either. There's a lot more labor input that goes into a meat chicken.
Right.
Vulnerable to predators.
Yeah, for sure.
Predators.
Yep.
Same
They
with
don't
turkeys.
roost up high at night, and so they can be attacked very easily.
Mm-hmm.
Even just their behavior in general is different. They don't seem to care about surviving that much.
It's true.
So,
There are more kind of a heritage breed of chickens and things, but we've found over the years that customers, we do have slow-growing Cornish cross chicken, and that's what customers have preferred. So we go with that.
a lot of things are dictated. You kind of have to mesh social conditioning into farming. You can only change so much of people's foods at once before they really start to get offended about it. And so, yeah, if a chicken that we raise in a wholly different fashion, still the end product looks and consumes similar to what they're used to, that's acceptable to a consumer. Whereas if you took something and said, this is chicken, eat it, but it has no resemblance of what they're socially conditioned to know what chicken looks like,
Right.
that's pretty hard to swallow sometimes.
Right. No, I can understand that. So that's chickens. And the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about is I want to touch on organ meat, organs, and bones. You guys sell those as well.
We do. I don't think I want to say that, though, because we're always out of them. They're really popular.
It's another understanding issue, though, I think.
Is, yeah.
In many levels, organs are, of course, better for you than the meat of the animal itself. But what people don't think about is you can't kill a cow just for its organs. And there's only one heart, for example, on a cow.
Right.
And so while you only need one customer to buy that heart, you need 100 customers to buy the meat that the heart was a part of.
Right.
And so you can't just always have heart in stock or liver in stock.
Right.
It's so much tied to the amount of meat that we consume.
And for those, because it's not a common knowledge, and coming out of being a city boy and having some exposure to farm and farming and that kind of lifestyle. Why are bones and organs, organ meat important for people to consume, as opposed to I should just live on steak and you probably can, but why would you need to add liver or beef heart? And
well, they're just more nutrient dense, especially coming from a completely grass-fed and finished steer, that all of those organs are going to be much healthier, which is then good for you to consume. When it comes to bones, the broth that comes from a grass-fed steer's bones is going to be so much better and so much healthier. It has all of that good collagen that then is good for our joints and the marrow, which is a healthy fat that you can get from the broth. And broth is amazing. The healing properties that it has. We have people who do the GAPS diet a lot, who have so many intestinal issues that are healing themselves with just broth.
Right.
And it's pretty amazing to see.
Yeah, I got recently introduced to the GAPS diet, and I think it was Natasha McBride talking about it, and I got her book, and so maybe I'll get lucky enough to invite her to the show. But she already recorded a lot of content out there talking about how our GI tract is so important, and a lot of people have leaky gut, so stuff is just going in, and again, just this systems thinking about your body. And I'm one of the things that is so good about doing these podcasts. I learn from a variety of different people, and one of my guests was a naturopathic doctor, and that's exactly what she was talking about. Our last episode was about GI tract and how what is happening. Why is it so important that that you have healthy food to deal with that and regulate that microbiome?
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to touch upon the organ organ meat and bones, because you guys are selling it, and I know you're running out because it is limited amounts, but they're super healthy and beneficial. And I was part of being proud of myself. I was able to coax concoct a meat mixture for my daughter, including liver, which is like by default liver, and kids don't definitely love the liver taste. It's an acquired taste, but what I do is I blend your ground lamb and ground beef and liver, and cook and grind that, and I mixed all of that together at such proportion that I still like kind of smuggle in enough of liver that she just got used to it, and she just loves it. And I'm just so happy about that, because I know how nutritious liver is. It's like you can't put a price tag on that, because it's just so dense with nutrients. So so thank you for providing that.
Welcome.
So
I actually, there's another facet there that I believe is important, and that is that you're consuming the entire animal.
Right.
Yes.
It's our great effort not to waste anything. So while it's wonderful that, hey, we're great and we can provide you with liver, really, we don't want to waste this animal either. It's God's creation. And so by using the bones, by using all of the organs and everything that can be, and some of that is regulated, unfortunately.
Right.
But that's an important part of that animal as well.
I think it respects the animal also. An animal has to give its life for us to eat, and we get good health from that too. And so we call it our head to tail philosophy, that we use as much of it as we can so that we can honor the life that it gave.
Right. Well, what else is in your future? As we're kind of tapering off with our conversation again, I can keep you over here forever, but I know you guys are busy, and maybe we'll have another opportunity to chat about maybe specific topics. But what else is happening in the development? I know you're building out, your operation, growing your operation I think it's dairy, right? Which is where you're going to have more. And what else is in your future? Like, where are we going to see you in a year and 5 years? Where do you see yourselves?
Well, right now we're building a goat dairy so we can sell raw goat milk. What else do we have on the horizon? I'm trying to think.
Yeah, hopes and dreams are huge.
Yeah. We've talked about having a restaurant of some sort. We have.
Do you need a chef?
I know, right?
Yes.
I can connect you with a chef.
That would be great.
I'm not kidding. We had a chef, Craig Borlick, who has a farm to table restaurant. I think it's a little bit south, and he was Robert Redford's chef for like 7 years. And I'll send you a link to it too, so you can watch that. And he's doing something in this space as well. So I'd love to connect you with him and see if there's an opportunity to do something together, because I think that would be great if you guys could have a restaurant. I mean, that's for those people who are just so lazy they will never do anything themselves in terms of that they would have the full product from you all the way to the table.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know. We've also talked. We have a nutritional therapist on site there that also manages our store, and we love having that part of the farm there too, because there's so many people coming that have health issues, diet issues. They go to the doctor throws antibiotics or medications at them, and they're trying to solve the root problem.
Right.
And I'm that's not my area of expertise. So we'd love to integrate that more also, and kind of make that part of the farm.
I have desires into cheese. We make our own cheese, soft cheeses. In fact, we had some before we came over here today, mozzarella cheese. And
very good.
The best milk, to no one's surprise, makes the best cheese.
What a shocker.
And and so that's something I would like to see happen in the future.
We're also currently working on beginning to ship our products. So that is a little bit of an undertaking. I know that there's other companies that do that, but trying to figure out, usually the larger companies, I can't go to them and say, hey, how are you shipping your meat? They're not willing to share that information. So
really,
getting that figured out, because in this day, we've always said, go to your local farm, but it's just people are used to getting things on their porch where they don't have to go.
Well, thank you, Amazon, right?
Right, yeah. And
it's a bit of a compromise.
To that.
Yeah. And we've addressed that before, our own complacency and our own need for self-gratification, or what we perceive as a need. And maybe this is, in my mind, a lesser of two evils, in that if I can convince somebody who doesn't live in proximity to shop at my store, but desires to support the type of products that we raise, well, maybe we can compromise.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe there is a gosh, I forget, it's like Butcher Box or something like that. There is some kind of a and they ship. And so actually, when I was traveling, I had some of that shipped, and I was actually surprised how well it worked. I mean, it's boxed and everything, and dry ice and all that stuff, and it worked. And so maybe joining forces with some other organization who already has that, which already has that figured out.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, I'm really grateful for many things. That you guys are here, that you guys are doing what you're doing, that you have this moral compass that's just beyond just like the profit. But I wish you well in terms of like business development, because I believe that if you guys will succeed and continue to grow and make this, but still make this within the parameters that you guys set for yourself, that still within the the principles that you guys are following, then that's going to be an example for others to follow and to kind of do this. And hopefully in time, enough people will get on board, and this is going to continue to grow and proliferate throughout the nation, so that we kind of heal ourselves through healthier food. So thank you so much. Any last thoughts or shout outs or anything that you guys you have on your mind that you have queued up?
No, I just want to thank you also. It's an important discussion. It's obviously something we care about. We appreciate you inviting us.
Yeah, and that it really is a beautiful relationship that we have, because you talk about how appreciative you are of us. We are appreciative of you and our other customers who come and buy from our farm, because it allows us to do something that we love. And so it's just a big ball of gratitude, that's just pretty awesome.
One thing helps, one feeds the other thing, and just the cycle. Where can people find out more about you, and what is your website, and how they can reach out to you?
Our website is utahnaturalmeat.com, and we have, if you're local, we have store information on there. If you want to come and visit, we have a few days each week that the store's open. And then we have Facebook, Utah Natural Meat, and Milk on Facebook. And Instagram is also Utah Natural Meat and Milk. We also have a YouTube channel, Utah Natural Meat on YouTube, if you want to check out some amazing videos that Shayn's in.
Show a little bit behind the scenes.
Shows a little bit about like our fodder machines that we have, and a little bit how we farm and things like that. So,
great.
Yeah.
So aside from connecting you maybe to other people who will be watching this, and maybe they'll be the right people with the right skills and the right connections to help you out grow in some of these respects, what else people can do to support you? I guess become your customers for sure. Is there anything else that you guys? We'll connect you to the chef. We'll make that restaurant happen.
Yeah, some things we've already talked about, but just being aware. Right. Increasing your awareness of where your food comes from, and what it means to you. Yeah. Paying attention.
Yeah.
And you have several different blogs on your or articles on your website that talks about different things. So viewers can go and check it out and kind of read more into whatever we haven't discussed over here or covered. So
yeah, and we have Instagram is kind of gaining more popularity. So we try and show a lot more of kind of what it's like at our farm and what we do during the day. And so there's a lot of videos and stuff there that you can check out.
Right. Well, thank you for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I wish you good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.